Richmond, north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Living in
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
These are the sorts of things that we should talk about right in the first 5 minutes of the podcast.
Started giving people free quotes.
In sunshine and rainbows, it is
Definitely a thing for just being a solo
The
operator.
change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
Yeah, it's okay for public consumption.
Yeah. No, I just want to know what if you have any goss on that new blower that they've got. I heard.
Oh, that's an interesting one because that blower, I was under the impression from when they first talked about it that it was a backpack blower. And then I was talking to my local Ego dealer and he's like, no, that's a handheld blower.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh.
So on the Skull Sessions, the video, Barry holds up a photo of it and you can see what it looks like. It's got a big looped, I have to squint, there's a big loop handle holder. And I was like,
yeah, because you
that
need
looks
two
good.
hands for the amount of blowing force it's got.
Yeah, I know that's. So I was like, oh, I wonder if you know if they've got it down yet, or if there's any demos. And then I thought, oh, maybe it's at BJ's event. Maybe Ego might have it down there. So
that would be nice if it is. I honestly don't know if it will be there, but I would hope so.
Yeah, that'll be awesome if it is, because they're the major sponsor of the Melbourne one.
Yes.
So I'm like, yeah, boys, if you want to, bring it out, bring it out then.
If Barry's listening, he needs to fly me down to Melbourne so I can be there to support it.
I think so. Hey, I think that's their big major one. So and you're not going to be that far away, are you? If I remember correctly, you're going to be near.
Correct. Wrong.
Okay.
So I'm heading to the Cape. So the Brisbane show, I will actually be in Cairns when it's on.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
And then when I get back from the Cape trip, it's like a week before or a few days before the Melbourne show. So I get back to Newcastle. So
okay.
I have thought about getting back and then just jumping in the car or on a plane and going straight down to Melbourne. But that's a big effort.
Yeah, it is. But that's going to be their biggest one, I think. I mean, I don't know, but I think the Brisbane one will be
Sydney.
Really? There you go.
Well, I'm hoping because that's the one I can get to easily.
Yeah. Bush Ranger's a major sponsor of that one.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, I think Skag, Bush Ranger and Ego are doing them.
Yeah.
They're their site sponsors or major sponsors.
Yeah, that'll be I can't wait for that, man. Yeah, that's going to be so good.
Yeah. It'd be awesome. I would love to go to all three. But, and again, if somebody's listening, if you're listening out there, 3 within a month and a half, it's just too hard to get to them all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm not even going to begin to know what the logistics are between setting that up, but whether or not it's easier to split them apart or whether or not it's easier just to put them all together. I mean, I imagine that he's doing it in winter because that's the quietest period of the year.
For sure. I'm not envious of him trying to coordinate all of that 3 shows within a few weeks of each other.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big job, but I'm thankful. Hopefully I win an Ego battery or something,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe even that new Ego blower would be nice.
Yeah. Oh, mate, yeah. What's the power of a backpack blower? Like, the 800, right? Do you know offhand what the power of that is in comparison to this?
No. So blowers use different metrics, and I think the manufacturers deliberately make it hard for you to compare blowers by using different metrics. So
yes,
you've got your air volume and air speed.
Yep.
Right. So if you're moving a lot of volume, then you can move more leaves at once. Whereas if you're moving a lot of speed, then you can move more stubborn leaves at once.
Ah, okay.
Right. So that the air speed will have more penetrating power, but the air volume will move more area at once. The underlying issue that you can't get around is the air force. So if you have air volume or air speed, it can be misleading because you can get really high airspeed out of a air compressor nozzle, but it ain't going to move a lot of leaves.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Right. It'll move something really stubborn, but it won't move a lot of leaves at all. So if you put the two together and you go, okay, the air volume and the airspeed combined, the best metric is the air force. So the newtons of force that it applies.
Yes.
So if
And
you have a look at some of the battery handheld blowers, some of them are down around 12 newtons. Some of them are getting up around 21 newtons, Ego, for instance. And the backpack petrol blowers are often up around the 28 to 30 newtons.
yes. And what? Yeah. Isn't that what Ego use? What's the 1700 and the what's that?
So that's volume. So
Okay.
1,300 cubic meters per hour, I think it is. It might be per minute. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it starts getting a bit too confusing to me, man. I that's why I just like to test them out. Get out there,
Yeah,
test
well,
them out.
that's it. You can look at them and read numbers all you like, but if you pick one up and give it a try, it makes a world of difference to understanding whether it suits you or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And the noise and the weight and all of these other things that play into it. But I know that I had a like my first multi-tool I got was the Bush Ranger MT262.
Right.
And I literally got that because I heard BJ talk about it on Skull Session. So I'm like, all right, that's a item because I had no idea. So I'm like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
And man, that thing's heavy. It's so heavy. And then now that I've got I recently just got Ego stuff, it's insane the difference between
Yeah.
weight. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
And not all of the Ego gear is lightweight either. Like if you're using their dedicated whip, the STX 4500, I don't know if you've got that.
Yeah. So I got that as well.
It's not lightweight.
No, it's not light. But well, I mean, I suppose it depends on what battery you're running in it. Like if you got a 2.5, it's still pretty light because it's carbon fiber shaft as opposed to a petrol. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. If you run a backpack battery, then it's probably going to give you that combination between runtime and lightweight that people are looking for. But if you put a battery on the whippersnipper, the 5 amp is the smallest I would recommend to put on it because any smaller and you're just not able to deliver the current that it needs to run it.
Yeah.
So
I
if you,
run mine on the second power setting.
yeah, okay.
I don't even need it on 3.
Yeah, and I run mine on the second power setting too, but I think what I prefer to look at is the RPM, and I like the higher RPM. So the Husky whip that I use has higher RPM than the Ego. And so I'm drawn towards that. When I use the Ego, it's confusing because it's like it's low RPM, but it's got a truckload of torque.
Yeah.
So if I want to do something a little bit thick, the Ego rips through it. Whereas if I want to do something that's just, cutting a really fine edge, I like the lighter weight machine that's got higher RPM.
There you go. Yeah, it was really tough. That's the thing with battery. I was going to make a commitment.
Yeah.
And that's the one I chose to go with. I guess because of the battery redemption was a really big thing. Although Husky now I've realized also do a battery redemption.
Yeah.
But
I like that, but I think there's a lot of value in having multiple brands of battery gear.
right, okay,
More so than with petrol gear. And the reason being is that it's easy for you to split your tools up according to what batteries are available for those tools. If you've got half a dozen Ego batteries and half a dozen Husqvarna batteries and half a dozen Bush Ranger batteries, then you go, okay, I can run X amount of tools off those batteries. So if I've got a whippersnipper in each of those product lines, then it's easy for me to go, all right, I've got batteries ready to go. Or send my employee out and it's like, okay, I'm taking the Ego gear. You can have the Husky gear.
yeah, okay, yeah, interesting. Yeah, because up until now, that's the first time I've heard that. Usually, I would hear, stick to one brand.
Yeah.
Because the batteries are obviously, and just end up getting a lot of batteries, and then you can alternate them between. You don't ever have that threat of running out of battery power.
And you can do that too. It makes sense to if you have all one brand, then it's easy to interchange between, if you've got half a dozen employees, everyone can use the same tools, same batteries. It's really easy to swap between. But the reason I like multiple brands there is because I really love certain tools in different brand ranges. And then I know those batteries are dedicated to that particular work task. So, for instance, if I want to do a lot of hedge trimming at the moment, Ego. If I want to do a lot of whipsnipping, Husky. And if I want to do brush cutting, to differentiate between doing vertical edges and then doing some heavier brush cutting work, Ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I want to do
what you mentioned before, the torque difference and
yeah.
Yeah, right.
If I want to do a blow job, then the Ego has the right tool. And Huskies, their blower works okay. It's nothing wrong with it, but the Ego is better.
Yeah. I see. I haven't moved on to blowers yet. I've got a Shindewa
You're
blower.
missing out.
It does all right. Yeah, no, well, I'm waiting for that new Ego one. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, yeah, right.
Yeah, I get it. But I'll be very honest with you, and I haven't tested that one yet. I've tested a bunch of backpack battery blowers. And the best battery tools that I have used are hedge trimmers and blowers.
Mm-hmm.
But the handheld blowers, not the backpack ones.
Yeah, the backpack blowers I remember you saying.
Yeah, all the backpack blowers have been disappointing when they're battery powered.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it just depends. I don't know if I want it. I mean, I've thought about it sometimes, getting a backpack blower.
Yeah.
But I just don't, it's one of those things where it's like, I just don't know if the current clientele that I have, the jobs I do, it warrants it right now. Yeah. Sometimes it does when I'm looking at especially like all the autumn leaves now, I'm just like, yes. But yeah, right. Yeah. I don't know. But either way, the handheld, I'll probably end up going Ego because I've heard you say before that the Ego blowers are pretty decent. So
it is. That I have not seen anything else that compares.
Yeah.
It's really good value. But I think looking at what you're saying there, the talking about getting the right tool for the job, I get a lot of people asking me about recommendations on different things. And when people ask me and they say they're thinking about getting a ride-on mower, I'm like, don't get it. Stop. Answer these questions before you even consider whether a ride-on mower is your best option. So how many of the jobs you currently do would you use a ride-on mower? Or in this case, what we were talking about, the backpack blower. How many jobs would you use it on? And if the answer is more than 20% of your jobs, then you might have a use case. If it's more than 80 or 90%, get out there and get it now because you're saving time and saving money if you've got the better tool for doing the jobs you're already doing.
Yeah.
So,
I would say also hold off, especially and this is, I suppose, specific, but if it's like a LMCA trend, then just hold off for a little bit. Don't go out and do what everyone else is doing. Just see what happens.
Yeah.
I feel like there was that trend when everyone was jumping on 32-inch standers.
That is a classic mistake trend that people were making. And I guess
they look cool, right?
It's an easy mistake to make because the obvious thing everyone was saying is if you've got residential yards where you're using a 21-inch mower, then a 32-inch will most likely fit through the gates and it will make you faster. A lot of people then found that wasn't actually true for them. It didn't save them time. It might have saved them a little bit of effort with pushing the mower, but it actually cost them more mucking around, fitting it on the trailer and getting it on and off the trailer.
Yeah, yeah. And then everyone had to go and get the bigger tires because they were leaving tire marks on the lawns, which for some people it worked great, but it's just an expensive mistake to make, that's all. Or it's a bit of effort to so you really just hold off for a little bit.
Yeah. So what I would say with a 32-inch stander, if your yards are 200 or 300 square meters of lawn, it's probably not the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
If your yards are bigger than 400 square meters of lawn, so if the total property size is 600 to 1,000 square meters or even up to 2,000 square meters, then a 32-inch stander is going to make you more productive. But you've still got to weigh up things like season and where you work. If you work in an area where it's constantly wet and your lawns are soft and boggy, then a stander is going to be challenging for you.
Yeah.
But if you,
It wouldn't work for me at all.
if you just have a bad season, then maybe consider holding off and then trying it when you have a better season where it's not so boggy and wet. Because if your lawns are the right size and you're going, okay, it should work for me, then one bad season doesn't mean it's a bad product. And so many times I've looked at things where I've made choices early on in the business and gone, yep, that was a bad choice. But then after being in business for 5 or 10 years, you go, there's probably 80% of those seasons where that would have been a really great tool, but I didn't have that experience at the start.
Is that the excavator?
No, that was a bad choice for me.
Yeah.
That was just a bad choice for me. There's plenty of people it will work for. Do it.
Yeah.
But put that analysis over it. Like, how many jobs are you going to do with it? Is it actually worth having, in that case, a $20,000 tool for making about $5,000 to $10,000 a year? And I'm sorry, for me, that answer's no. I tried it, proved it, walked away.
Yeah. Did you have to do any courses or whatever to get to operate that excavator, or did you just buy it?
No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so there used to be a licensing requirement of some description, but I think WorkCover realised that if they were issuing licenses for operating heavy machinery, then they became liable if you had a license and didn't operate it effectively.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they simply removed the license and put the onus back on the operator to prove that they were capable.
Yeah. Lovely. Yeah. Yeah, I'd only think about it if getting one of those machines, if any ride on anything, would be if I have some sort of contract and then I can sort of budget the cost into that contract, I imagine.
If you're talking about a backpack blower, so
Oh, well,
three different tools here, right? Backpack blower, it's pretty straightforward. If you have enough residential jobs and you've got a really wet season, then it doesn't matter how small the blow jobs are, the backpack blower is going to make it a lot easier to move wet grass and wet leaves.
That's true.
So straight up, there's a use case for anybody who's doing more than a day a week. If you're doing less than a day a week and you're really just doing it as a hobby, it's a hard case to push for $1,000 plus on a blower. But if you are doing it as a proper job and running a legit business, then it's pretty easy use case to say the backpack blower is going to save you effort whenever you have really wet conditions. So wintertime is a great case, or now when you've got a lot of leaves to move, it's going to make your life easier.
Yeah. No, that's actually a really good point. And when you look at the cost of it, I'm pretty sure that I paid $550 for my Shindewa handheld anyway. So, and it's probably got double the power.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
Yep. So if you go from that to the ride-on mower or stand-on mower or zero turn, or I'm not going to mention tractor mowers, but a lot of people will do that as their first case for a ride-on. If you look at the number of jobs you have where you can legitimately use a ride-on or a stand-on mower and go, yep, that's going to actually prove beneficial to use that instead of the push mower, I would say you want to be able to use it on over 50% of the jobs that you do. You want to aim for being able to use it on 80 or 90% of the jobs you do. But at 50%, you can go, yeah, there's a pretty good use case there. If it's down around 20% of the jobs you do, you need to really start analysing it and going, well, that 20% of the jobs needs to be bringing in enough income to justify the expense of the mower. So you might say it's a $12,000 mower, and if you've got $40,000 a year coming in on a contract that warrants having that $12,000 mower, there's your use case. If you've got $40,000 worth of residential jobs that you can use it on, and that's 20% of your work, then congratulations, you're doing pretty well, and it might be worthwhile for you to consider it. But that's on the margin. If it's 20% of your work, you start going, well, it's not a lot of value there to have that tool sitting in the trailer, carting it around for one day a week.
Yeah, exactly.
So unless you coordinate to use it all at once and then you put it away for the rest of the week, it becomes more of a liability than an asset.
Yeah, that's right. And I did speak to a gyms guy, I think, and he said that he had 1 week which was all just dedicated ride-on work. and that's how, like, I think might have been 1 week a month or something, and
Yeah.
that justified him having it. So,
Yeah.
you know,
So efficiency is the thing that rules a business and the decisions you make as a small business owner. Right Mowers give you the options in their product lineup to match efficiency with size, fuel usage, and the type of jobs you want to target, from catching to mulching or side discharge, from roadside verges to acreages, and manicured lawns to 6 feet tall and super long. I've been using the Right Stander I 42-inch with a Catch Pro for manicured areas and the Stander ZK61 to maximise productivity for large open acreage mowing. If you need to replace your push mower, try the 32-inch Stander B. If you have more open access to residential properties, there's a 42 through 48-inch option that suits you. And if you want to enter the acreage market, the 52, 61 and 72-inch machines have choices in engine size and model type to suit the work you want it to do. Right Standards go the distance, saving you time and money season after season. We moved from the blower to the ride-on mower to the excavator. The excavator is an interesting case because I used it in winter and I pulled in about $5,000 to $10,000 worth of jobs with that excavator each winter when I had it. And some people might go, yeah, that justifies it. Well, it's a $20,000 tool. So 2 years worth of jobs, still not quite enough to pay for the cost of the tool, let alone make any money out of it. And, you know, I sold the tool for basically the same as I bought it for. So it wasn't really a loss in that sense.
yeah, it was more just a lesson.
Well, if you've got a tool that will do 4,000 hours across its life and you're going, okay, how's that going to work? You've got to be able to justify that it's making enough money to replace the tool too.
Mm.
So like with the ride-on mower, you go, well, if it can do between 1,000 and 4,000 hours, how long do I use it before I have to replace it? And then divide the cost by that amount of time to work out whether it's worth or how much it's worth per job.
Yeah.
So the excavator for me, it was an easy choice of going, yeah, it wasn't worth my while. It was a fun experiment, wasn't worth my while, got rid of it and moved on.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not horrible, but so that's good.
If you do what Grant Little done, he's got an excavator and a bobcat and a truck, I think. And he does the same thing, but in winter he's bringing in probably, I think he said around $100,000 from his earth moving. Wow. Well, I think the writing's on the wall. If you are doing that sort of money, then you'd be stupid not to have it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
horses for courses.
yeah, exactly. I wanted to say, when I hear a lot about everybody talking about, you know, what they're bringing in and their hourly, and you've spoken about it like, you know, countless times. But I feel like, and I don't, you know, it's probably wishful thinking, but it would have been awesome if we had a survey that people could fill in where it talks about what type of work they do, where they're located, what their hourly rate is, and all these variables, what their expenses are. And that would probably give us a more accurate, truer representation of what people's hourly rates need to be. Because some people's expenses are so high, and I'm like, wow. And some people's aren't. So sometimes here's the other thing that gets me. I hear all about people doing fortnightly mows. I maybe have 1, 2 clients that I do fortnightly. The rest of them want monthly, and they to even like broach the idea of fortnightly, they'd be like, no, hell no, like we just don't need it. Yeah, because they don't really want like a nice manicured. I mean, they like it when it looks freshly cut and everything, but they're not willing to part with the money for it to be done fortnightly. So
That's
yeah,
interesting.
I feel so envious of when I hear about all these guys talking about their 2 weekly mows.
I guess what you're saying is valuable, having that chart to compare the different options, like what your expense ratio is like and the types of jobs you do, what your turnover is like, all those
Where you're
various
located.
factors. Yeah, where you're located. All those factors will impact you, yes. But I don't think it's worthwhile to go to the effort of producing a really complex chart of statistics like that.
Okay.
The reason being, like for somebody like you, sure, makes sense. And it helps you to go, okay, this is where I fit in that market.
Mm.
I would rather say this is some goals you can look at and you tailor them according to you. So, for instance, in your area, and we haven't actually introduced you yet, so we should
We just hit the
say
ball rolling.
welcome to the dungeon, Alex Ranse.
Thank you. Thank you.
And what area is it that you're in? Because I think
So-
you're in Victoria, but
Yeah, so I'm in Melbourne, and I would say that it's sort of like north. I believe it would be called like North Melbourne, but like not North Melbourne. So Carlton, everyone sort of knows that.
okay.
The beer. Let's see what else. So we got Carlton. There's a place at Preston Reservoir. So yeah, I would say it's just north of the city.
So you're out of the CBD, but you're not out as far as, say, Lilydale?
No, not out that far.
Okay.
No.
I don't know Melbourne at all. I've been there. I've been to Lilydale because that's where I've got some friends. I've been to a few different places, but yeah, the geography is just totally lost on me.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, yeah, Lilydale's, I think, further northeast of sort of where I primarily am.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly like primarily residential, definitely not 2,000 square meters or any of that.
Yeah.
And it's slowly becoming more like old buildings knocked down, townhouses and apartments slowly
Yeah.
creeping up everywhere. And yeah, these tiny little front yards, these tiny little postage stamp lawns.
So if we go back to what you were saying before we needed to make sure everyone knows you're in the dungeon, the effect that it has on where you live and the types of jobs that you chase doesn't really matter.
Mm.
The reason I say that is because, and you hear me talk about this on other episodes, I want to know numbers, and I'm going to ask you to share your numbers, but you don't have to. I'll ask you. If you look at the numbers are very telling. It doesn't matter the types of jobs you do.
Yeah.
So because you're doing lawn mowing, you don't have a ride-on mower, your expenses are going to be fairly low compared to somebody who's got more expensive equipment. Or the other factor is how much travel you do in the day. That has a big bearing on your expense ratios.
Yes.
So what sort of travel are you doing?
So I outlined when I began. So I've been going for about 2 years now. And what I started doing was I started on Airtasker. That was how I got started. And I would just go around and do jobs slowly and slowly build a clientele that way. And then eventually I sort of had multiple clients within a certain border, and I was like, okay, this is going to be my area, and I drew the line, and I was like, right, this is going to be my area that I'm going to do. And then, as you can imagine, for the next, I always get people wanting just outside that line that I drew, but no, I've stayed firm to it, and I basically broke it down into days. So I do like one day in this area, one day in this area, and then
Awesome.
in the middle of that is sort of like the bulk area, which is Preston Reservoir area.
Okay.
That's where the bulk of my work is, and those I can sort of be a little bit more lenient with. Like I can sort of attach them to the other day because they're on the way back.
Yeah. That sounds very similar to what I used to do.
Yes. So
But I would travel probably 10 or 15 minutes from home when I was doing residential work, and that was the average that I would be. So about
that's
4
my goal.
suburbs. And yeah, that way, if I got asked to do a job which was 20 minutes from home, no, not interested.
Yes. Yeah, so that's eventually like I'll whittle it down eventually. So I'm pretty close to being completely full.
Yeah.
And then that's when the fun begins, because you can sort of then like raise prices, get rid of the clients that aren't so great, and then up my prices because I know that I've got that revenue stream there anyway. So I'm not so, chasing after these jobs anymore.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at right now. And I don't run a trailer setup. I run out of a caddy van actually, but it's like
Okay.
a maxi van. So I fit my 216 just in it,
Yep.
and got a little wooden ramp, and works pretty good.
Yeah.
I've always thought about whether or not I should go with the trailer setup,
Yeah.
but I would need to. I don't know. It's a tough one because again, that's such like I'm saving a lot on expenses. When you got a
Yeah.
trailer and you got the wheels. I don't know if I'm pretty sure you have to rego a trailer if it's a business for purposes, I think. I'm not sure what the rules are here, but
Yeah. The rules are out there, but I think a lot of people will have a trailer registered in their personal name and use it for business.
yeah, right.
Yeah, the rules are there to make sure that you're paying more road tax if it's getting used for work purposes instead of private purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think insurance will come into it a bit as well, but the rego's the rego, the insurance is the insurance, right? So you can have it registered in your name and then the insurance through your business.
Yes.
Yeah, technically you need to identify correctly what it's used for, but let's talk about those numbers for a minute because I think that's really interesting. And this comes back to how you choose to run your business. So, what you're telling me is that the type of customers that you've got and the expectations that they have and that you have are built on and based on the type of people that live in the areas that you service.
Correct. Definitely.
So, if I said to you, you can find customers in that area that are wanting their lawn to be cut weekly. Trying to read your face at the moment, and it's deadpan. I'm like, no.
No,
You're thinking no.
most
Not a chance.
clients, yeah, primarily. I mean, look, I advertise for 2 or 4 weekly because that's all I do. I don't do 3 weekly, and I transitioned to that. Originally, I did, but then it just became a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit worried because this will be the first time where I've changed things up a bit over winter. So,
Okay.
in regards to going like 2 and 4, so usually the 4, sometimes they go out to 6.
Yeah.
Because people's lawn just don't grow at all. And even if I will say, they'll message me and be like, "Oh no, it doesn't need to be cut." I get that now with 4 weekly. Like
Yeah.
after 4 weeks, they'll be like, "Oh, it doesn't need to be cut." And sometimes I'm like, "Oh, all right, mate." You just like they don't want to pay. Like that's the impression I get, as opposed to whether or not it needs to be cut. And look,
Yeah.
I've heard there is a bit of education sometimes, and it's important. And I know that I've heard that before, and I do
Yeah.
try to do that. But there's also a huge demographic of people who that I have who aren't familiar with having a property with lawn. They come from a place where there isn't lawn and they're not used to how. I mean, for example, one was like, how do I just kill all of this? And I'm like, no, you can't. And they're
Yeah.
like, but if we just poison it all, I'm like, yeah, then you're just going to have a whole front yard of weeds. Like they're not used to it, so they don't understand that it's a common thing that here we mow our lawns and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
And I guess this comes back to the old issue that we're trying to solve here is what expectations have you put on yourself and what expectations do you put on your customers and what do they put on you? So it really is dependent on how you choose to run your business. And I would say you choose to run your business at the moment based on the type of customers that you are currently working with, and therefore you want to keep that business model going, and that's really efficient for you to do that. So it's not a problem, right?
Mhm.
I will still come back and ask you about whether you can do weekly cuts, but that's not relevant if your business model works really well with doing fortnightly cuts and monthly cuts.
Yeah.
So you can build a great business model doing that. And if the jobs are worthwhile doing them, then that's not a problem. So I keep saying, look at those numbers that make sense to you. So if you are doing over $500 in a day and you're not breaking your back to do that, then you're in the ballpark.
Mm.
If you're doing less than $500 a day and you're doing more than 8 hours a day, then you probably need to start going back over that and start going, oh, maybe I should change a few things to make sure that it's worth staying in this industry.
Yeah.
So you can do one-off jobs or monthly jobs or fortnightly jobs or weekly jobs or daily jobs. It doesn't really matter. If your numbers add up to those right numbers, then you're in the right ballpark.
Yeah.
If you're happy with customers that you've got, then why change that? If you want to change it, then what I suggest people do is go, okay, find one customer that is the type of job you want so that you go, okay, that's where I want to be. And then all your other customers need to fall into line with that one that you really like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think, yeah, that's generally been my my plan as well. It was basically fill my books so that I don't have the stress in regards to finance. Like I always have a revenue stream, and then
yeah.
build up. You had that guy on who he'd been doing it for like 20 years, and he had like I just loved listening to him. He was just like, they know that this is how long I'm coming. I'm coming when I turn up. And like he pretty much called all the shots. But he said that he'd spent 20 years like getting this perfect, like, perfect cream of the crop of clientele. I can't remember who it was, but
I'm guessing that's Brian Holt. He's in his 60s and he said he's charging out at about $154 an hour.
yeah, I think that was him. But he just the way he talked about it is like he pretty much was like everyone knew the rules and they all just followed his rules. Otherwise, he was like, see you later.
Well, it's a case for him of educating the customers. And then when he gets a new customer, he's proud of telling them it's going to cost you over $150 an hour for me to do your gardening.
Yeah.
Because he can very quickly say, based on the facial expression they give when he says the amount, you're not the right person for me. See you later. Or, yep, sounds like our relationship's going to be perfect.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So, yeah, it comes back to that. You look at it and go, okay, if Brian's doing $800 in a day, does it matter if he's charging $20 an hour or $160 an hour? It matters about whether he's getting quality of life in his career choice.
Yeah.
And if he's happy with what he's doing and the numbers are profitable, then great. If you work off hourly rates, you'll find there's so many variables in there that it can be really frustrating to compare yourself to somebody else, which goes back to what you were saying earlier in terms of having a multitude of different things to compare, statistics to analyze and a big chart of if you're in this area or if you do this or if you have this equipment. No, just make it really simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hourly rate is really valuable, but on its own, it means nothing. Compare your hourly rate to your day rate. So if you can do, and I would suggest at the moment between $80 an hour and $200 an hour, but the average is going to be around $100 or $120 an hour. If you're in that ballpark, then the next stage is to go, okay, are you doing regularly above $500 a day or somewhere between $700 and $1,000 a day? So $500 or $600 a day is going to meet a lot of people's needs. A lot of people I talk to are hitting somewhere between 700 and 1,000. So 800 is a really common number to hear.
Yeah, right.
So if you're in that ballpark, then you can start going, well, I'm okay, but do I want to move the needle?
Mm.
And another great one there is to go, okay, I might have one day where I hit $800 in the day, but my average is $400.
Mm.
So the way to work that out is to go, okay, well, how much are you doing in a week? And $2,500 in a week will give you $500 a day, 5 days a week. But you might go back to one of the things you said there is if you drop it from 5 days to 4 days a week and you can still hit $2,500, that gives you a lot of flexibility. And I think that's one of the things that's worthwhile to look at is if you are trying to fill your books before you start finding the right pricing structure, aim for 3 days a week or 4 days a week as your baseline to go, okay, I'm pretty much full at that. I can take on extra jobs, but 3 or 4 days a week gives me enough work if the prices are right. And I've got that extra day or two a week that I can throw in odd jobs that I might not have as regulars, or I might be able to chase something else, might spend some time marketing or doing something else with that time.
Yeah, right.
So if you're at that stage in business where you go, yep, I've got 3 or 4 days a week that are full, that I can clear the schedule on the other day or 2 days a week, then you can start going, okay, with that spare time, I want to find ideal customers because I want to hit the right numbers.
Mm.
And your ideal customer is going to be different to my ideal customer. So that's why I think the area, the pricing, all the different things, the type of business that you're running become irrelevant when you start going, well, let's talk about what numbers you need.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, what you're saying is like I agree with 100, but like yeah, there's also something to be said for people working within a specific demographic at a different income level. What they're willing to part with. But also like one thing that I don't know if it's different, but like competition levels in different areas. Like I'm in, pretty close to the CBD Melbourne. I don't know if there's more or less competition where I am than in uh, general Australia or the coastal
Right.
cities or even regional areas and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that never really gets discussed or talked about actually.
Yeah, and it does come up. It's a pretty important factor to talk about. And I think you'll find because lawn mowing is a low barrier to entry business, that competition probably increases in areas where the socioeconomics are a little bit lower.
Yeah.
You're talking an area where the average house price is over $1 million at the moment, say $1 to $1.5 million. Chances are those people have a reasonably high paying job.
I'm in Melbourne. I'm in Melbourne,
Well,
man.
maybe not.
Every house here is damn near $1 million. No, I'm
Yeah.
being exaggerating, but yeah.
Well, it's true to a degree, right? Everything's become harder to afford. But at the same time, the relevance there is in a higher socioeconomic area, there's probably a lot more choices for jobs that people have rather than going, okay, I'm either working for Domino's or Coles or Woolworths or I start my own business.
Yeah. Well, also the higher economic areas, they will. I could be wrong, but just generalizing here, I feel like they might be a little bit more house proud, so they might want to pay for a more specialized service. They want those hedges, those high hedges done, as opposed to other areas where they're just like, just cut the grass. We don't care if you make it, just cut it. Like I, for example, have a lot of rental clients.
Yeah.
And they couldn't give a toss about nothing. All they want is to cut the grass so the landlord doesn't bother them, And I'm like, hey, we could put some mulch down here. They're like, no, we're not fixing up someone else's garden. And I'm like, all
Yeah.
right. So there's that as well. But yeah, definitely there are clients that care. You know what I've found? I've found that elderly clients, a lot of my clients who are elderly have these beautiful gardens and they really care about the way their gardens look. And they can be some of the more enjoyable jobs that I've gotten. But yeah, there is a great deal that are like, we don't care, just cut it.
Yeah. I think the price question is going to come up with your different clientele all the time.
Mm.
Okay? And they're going to be looking at are you offering them good value? If you find the right clients, then $80 to $200 an hour is good value.
Yes.
If you find the wrong client, then $80 an hour is ridiculous. And I still hear people saying can't charge more than $40 or $50 an hour. And there's a lot of people in Australia saying that they can't get away with more than $50 an hour. So I feel sorry for people when they say that. And part of it is there's a little bit of truth to what they're saying. And part of it is their own belief structure that they can't charge more than that.
Yeah. I know that I definitely started out undercharging myself. I think
too.
most people do. I think, yeah. And as like with everybody else, LMCA was like a huge, like, especially coming from Airtasker. Airtasker will give you the most warped sense of, like, I saw a job for a nature strip. They set the budget as $30 and someone accepted that job. And I worked out after you pay 20% or whatever, they're getting what, $15 after that for that job. Mine, and that doesn't even include income tax and all of that. So I'm just like, well, if people are accepting jobs at this rate, how are we supposed to bump the price up, and how are we supposed to get? That's how I felt at the beginning, because I
Look, this
didn't
is
have any
classic.
idea.
This is classic of some Australianisms that we can throw around. The old trading post. And
Yeah.
if you've ever watched The Castle, you'll remember the old line where they're looking through the trading post and they're like, oh, check out this, jousting sticks.
Yeah.
How much they want? Oh, tell them they're dreaming.
Yeah.
Right? The
Overhead
same thing
projector.
happens on Airtasker and the same thing happens on Facebook Marketplace. So
Yeah.
if you are aiming for that sort of clientele, you're going to get that sort of response.
Yeah.
I recently sold my van. I had black Renault Traffic and it was the Formula Edition, so it was nice. And I bought it for $30,000 in COVID and I sold it for not much less than that. But when I sold it, I didn't put it on Facebook Marketplace. I put it on car sales.
Yeah.
Now, car sales wanted close to $200 to advertise it for sale. I just about fell over backwards and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be joking. $200 to advertise my van.
Yeah.
But I sold it within 5 days.
Yeah.
And I got what I was happy with for not the actual asking price, but pretty close to it.
Yeah. You didn't get stuffed around too much.
If I'd put it on Marketplace, I would have been offered $10,000 for it.
Yeah.
Probably
and they probably
100
wouldn't
times.
have turned up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we deal with this. And if you want customers that are these type of customers like Airtasker or Facebook Marketplace or Facebook community groups, then great. That's a great way to build your business. But you've got to work out whether you're happy with the pricing that you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And I guess this goes back to, like LMCA and the Australian Professional Contractors Group. They're awesome places for helping you to get your prices right.
Yeah. No,
So-
100%. Yeah, definitely. Even though, it became a bit of a thing where people got annoyed. How much you quote for this? How much you quote for that? But it still was fantastic for me. And I sort of got into it, sort of when it was really, I don't know, actually, it'd probably been around a while before I jumped on, but it was really booming there for a bit.
Yeah. But if you hear enough people saying that you should be charging $100 an hour plus GST, and you're sitting there going, and I'm not saying you are, but you're sitting there going, oh, I'm working off 65. You're going to be feeling pretty frustrated and annoyed that you're 40% less than the next person.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I for me, I just think about all of the other factors in my head. That's what I think about. I immediately go, well, if these people who are charging this, if they sign up to Bizza, are they going to start getting leads? Because I've been on Bizza for over a year and a half, and I haven't got one lead from them. So to me, that seems like there's enough competition in my area to not the prices can remain low enough.
And I think that's true with Bizza. It's a great reflection of how much work is available in your area.
Yeah, I mean, look, sometimes I drive around and I'll see 3-4 gyms guys in one day. And I'll be like, How you guys are working in each other's territories, or like what's going on here? Like, how big are the territories? Like, I just think, and I could be completely off. Maybe it's like this everywhere else, but this is just like what I've noticed. But I don't think that where I am right now is like price wise. I don't think that I think there's probably room to go up. There's always room to go up. Um, but I don't think that I'm like, scraping the barrel. I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
But it definitely when people have like, the other guy, if they say, well, the other guy will do it for, and it's not hugely under what you're asking, then that's something, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and sometimes you need to be willing to move on your price to get the jobs. If you need the work, or you're like, yeah, I really want that job, you need to be willing to go, all right, I'll bend a little bit, I'll flex, and I'll be happy to go for $80 instead of $100 for that job. And maybe that's worth your while. I think the best thing to do when they say the other guy is to recognize their weakness. So if the customer is saying the other guy, there's a reason why they're saying that. The other guy's not there.
yeah. Yeah.
So straight up, that's an opportunity for you to upsell. And what I've told people countless times is give them 3 quotes straight away and remind them that the other guy's not there to give them a price. So what I do is I say, okay, Alex, your house is looking pretty average at the moment. The bare minimum that I'm going to charge you to keep it in that condition, and you'll be my worst customer, is going to be $75, right? And 20 cuts a year. That'll make you my worst customer. When I say worst customer, I'll be happy to have you as a customer, but that's the bottom of the pool that I'm willing to fish in. If you want to be my best customer, then what we're going to do is we're going to increase your cut frequency. So it's still going to be fortnightly for most of the year, less in winter, and then in the middle of summer, we're going to do an extra 6 cuts. So summer, you're going to get weekly for 12 weeks in a row. 26 cuts a year instead of 20 cuts a year. Okay, that's my best customer. And in that, on top of the 26 cuts a year, we're also going to charge you for doing 2 treatments. And then if you are really house proud, then we can go up to weekly for 7 or 8 months out of the year, or maybe even 9 months out of the year. And weekly, all of that growth period, plus instead of 2 treatments, as many treatments as we need, and full lawn renovations, or the full works is available for that particular customer because they're so fussy and they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right? So that way you set the standard of going, I'm happy to work in this area. If you want to be my worst customer, I'm still happy and we still have a good relationship. This is the bottom of the pool that I'm fishing in. And that way the customers are going to think about that. What would they do if they were looking after their yard? Would they mow it weekly? And a lot of people would. But if they're, like you say, they've been in an area where they've never had to look after a lawn before, that then gives them 3 quotes to compare to each other. Where do we want to sit in that? Do we want to, now that we know that we've got this thing that needs doing, and we've got a range from worst to great to actually a little bit painful because it's so good.
Yeah.
Then they start thinking about it from that perspective rather than just going, let's get out of this as cheap as possible. And if they do want to get out of it as cheap as possible, well, they've got that $75 20 times a year.
Yeah. Yeah, nice.
I think that really helps to elevate your customers because on average, people don't want to be a pain in the butt. They want to be your favorite. So when you turn up there, you're happy, they're happy, and you want that to be the case where their yard looks pretty great. But you don't want it to be the case where they're so painful because you've got to spend ridiculous amount of time there. And maybe you do. Maybe you want all really high-end customers where you go, okay, I'm going to be there weekly from the beginning of September through to the end of May.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I've got a pretty broad range of clientele. Like I do some commercial, some NDIS, some aged care stuff.
yeah.
So the only thing I don't do is real estate, and that's because I've I've seen all the people's comments on it. Apparently, they're a nightmare to deal with. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll stay away
Yeah.
from that.
Yep. Fair.
And I haven't got any strata. I've put in bids for strata jobs, but I haven't got them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's the other thing. I'm just like, well, if these guys aren't even like respond, I mean they don't even respond to my emails when I send through my bids. I don't know if that's normal, but yeah. So I would just wish that I was able to have a better idea of what people are doing around me. That's all.
Yeah.
Because then I could like that's basically all I mean I right now, like when I look at my financials and stuff, I'm doing good. Like I feel like I'm doing good. Uh but uh yeah, I would need to see, it would be interesting to see what other people are doing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you go to LMCA or the professional contractors group, you'll find if you just put a request out there, people that are covering these suburbs, and you'll get a response.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea actually. I should sort of try and hone in the info a bit more.
Well, if you know half a dozen people that are working the same suburb as you, then on a rain day, hey, let's meet at the pub.
Yeah, absolutely. Um Yeah. No, I mean, I always like talking about this stuff, and I'm always thinking about this, going over things, and I'm always looking at ways. For me, I've pushed a fair bit, quotes to see like what, generally speaking, what I can like. I haven't done the three option idea. That's a good idea. I might try that, but generally, basically, I've just been quoting what I think higher amounts each time and seeing what fish will jump
Yeah.
on the hook, right? And then from that, I'm also simultaneously looking at how can I lower my expenses here? What's the best way that I can lower my expenses here or improve productivity here? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's just generally how I'm trying to get as much profit, squeeze as much profit out at the end of the day as I
Yeah. Well,
can.
if you try the 3 quotes, have a think about it. If you were going to look at a car, if you get 3 quotes, that gives you a really good idea of whether you're getting the right price on a particular type of car you're chasing. So other people are going to be doing the same thing in their mind when they ask you to quote on their lawn. Am I going to trust Alex that he's getting me a fair price, or do I get 3 quotes so that I know that I'm in the right place?
Yeah.
So if you give them 3 from yourself, they don't need to go to somebody else to start going, yeah, I've got some confidence that Alex is really interested in looking after me and give me the right price.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they may still go to somebody else just to fact check that and make sure that you haven't pulled the wool over their eyes. But less people will go to somebody else if you give them 3 prices.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing that I found when I started, I was like you, working in that area where a lot of lower socioeconomic customers were what I was getting. And over time, I found that there were plenty of well-off people in my area that needed their lawns doing as well. And mostly elderly people were the ones who wanted their lawns looked after better.
Yeah.
But
I don't think that I wouldn't classify my area necessarily as low socioeconomic area. It's just more that the clientele or the people that are living within this area generally don't really want to invest a huge amount in the maintenance of their gardens.
yeah,
I feel like a lot of them, given the choice, would just throw a bunch of white rocks down on the ground or some fake
when I
rock.
say that lower socioeconomic, I'm not talking about a high crime rate area like all junkies and all that. I'm talking more about like the average income in my area would be lower than the average income in Sydney.
Yeah.
So if you look at the people living in my area, if the average income in Sydney is $120,000 at the moment, the average in my area might be $80,000.
Yeah.
So that's still reasonable.
Yeah.
But they're looking for a bargain. They are looking at whether they should mow their lawn on their own on their day off, or
Exactly.
do they get you to do it? So
Exactly.
if they're paying you, and let's pull that number $100. If they're paying you $100, 20 cuts a year, that's $2,000 a year.
Yeah.
So do they want to spend $2,000 getting you to cut it, or do they spend $2,000 on a mower?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that my average lawn is around 80
Yeah.
right now. So that's sort of like I want to progress up to 100 from there.
Yeah.
So it's taken me a while to sort of get there and get rid of like the junk and a lot of the stuff that we all run into where it's like, oh, while you're here, can you do this? While you're here, can you do that? And then an hour later, actually, old elderly ladies, they get me all the time with that.
Yep.
I'm just like, oh, no worries. I can't say no to them. And then I'm like there half an hour later chopping, branches off a lemon tree. And I'm like, what am I doing here, man? I need to go to the next job.
Do you want to leave your job to create a profitable and enjoyable lawn and garden business? Aussie Lawn Stars shares the stories, lessons and advice to help you grow a healthy, productive, efficient and sustainable business. Do you want more or simply have a question about what you heard? Contact Aussie Lawn Stars at iCloud.com or look me up, Gary Ashton, on Facebook and Messenger for individual help. Business coaching helps you to have the right mindset and perspective when it comes to daily decision making, planning, or knowing what to look for to improve your business. thinktankcoaching.com.au has helped me, and they can help you move towards your business goals. Visit their website or email them thinktankcoaching@outlook.com. If you want to establish the best practices in bookkeeping, accounting and business structure, contact Adrian from Prosper Financial on 0249 773363. And you all need to head to Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia and the Australian Professional Lawn Contractors Facebook groups for supportive communities focused on our industry. You heard me talk about an elderly lady early on in my podcast. She was in her 90s.
Yeah, the one that was it the talking one? And
every time she would come out, oh, you didn't do this. The last person used to do the gardening while they were here. And I'm like, yeah, you're not paying me for gardening.
Yeah. No, I started quoting in people talking because of you. When you said, was it you that said that, like, I was like, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that.
Well, I think when I started, her lawn was $40. I can't say that out loud. Everyone's listening. Right? And I put it up to $50 because she would come out and complain every time and it would take me longer. So I was like, all right, it's $50 to be here.
Yeah.
And she didn't bat an eyelid when I put the price up. That's 20% increase.
Yeah.
But she didn't bat an eyelid. She's like, okay, no worries.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recently put my prices up a bit for some of the lower paying, and it's gone over smoothly, so that's reassuring.
I find it's really good to do it on 5 or 10% of your customers where you just go, they are below the average. Need to bring them up and bring them up enough to make it so that you don't have to put a price increase in there in 12 months' time. So if you bring it up enough that they're above the average, then they get to sit on that price for a couple of years.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. I am just holding off till spring because I did see someone make a comment like the best time to do it is during spring because then everyone's desperate.
Yeah, there is truth to that. But that's also, there's a risk there because they might find somebody else easily too. So there's always that risk. If your price is too high, they won't even talk to you and explain that. They will just go and start shopping elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. But however, when it comes to the time that I'm put my prices up, I will be in a position where if they go somewhere else, okay, so be it. That's what I've been working towards. That's basically the plan. Is just to slowly get rid of the lower paying clients and replace them with the cream of the crop, just like that.
Yeah,
that guy did.
The other thing that I've found really effective there, and you said you do one day in one area and then another day in another area, another day in the next area. If you've got a few areas like that, what I found is that I started getting different quality customers on different streets or different suburbs. So it's very easy if you've got $80 customers that are in one street, but the next suburb over, you go, well, I've got a street there where they're all up around $100 per customer. Then you start favouring that area.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. I could average out different areas and see what the average cut price is, and then if it's really low, or even if I determine where the lowest suburb is, I could just remove that suburb altogether.
Well, I did it by types of customers. So areas give certain different types of customers, right? So one customer I had was very well off, and the work I was doing for him was not his own home. It was a site where he would have people come in from overseas. They'd stay there while they're working for him, and then they'd fly back overseas again. So it was like a dormitory, and I'd look after that. And then he sold his house. And when he's put his house up for sale, he's like, oh, can you quote on my house? And I'm like, oh, where is it? And he's like, oh, and it was on the Central Coast on a golf course. Wow. So I was like, look, it's over an hour travel for me. You're going to pay a lot. You're better off getting somebody who already looks after the golf course houses to do it. But he's like, no, I want you to do it. So I was like, okay, you're paying me for the travel back and forth. It's an hour each direction plus the time of work on the site.
Yeah.
And he's just like, go for it, do it. So it was really easy and straightforward. And it put me in an area where if I really wanted to push it, I could have picked up other jobs in that golf course in all the condos that are there. And they're high-end customers. So I don't know if you listen to Paul Jameson, but that's what he did with his business is he ended up in a high-end area where all of the customers there were celebrities, basically.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I am trying to. So near the bottom part of like my area is more high end, the wealthier houses. Like yeah, so that is. I'm always trying to squeeze my way in there, but I reckon that place is super competitive. I reckon everybody wants that, So like,
Well,
yeah,
yes,
once you
but
like.
no.
True, but there's the other thing as well that I've noticed is that there are a lot of gardeners that have been doing it for a long time. Like I'll get there and they'll say, "Oh, our previous gardener's just recently retired. He's been doing our lawns for the last 10 years." And I'm like, "Wow, this guy had them in lockdown for 10 years." So I'm like, "That's awesome." But there's a lot of that as well. There are a lot of guys that are slowly. But the thing that's scary is the amount of them that say, "Oh, our gardener recently had a heart attack," or "Our gardener recently broke his arm," and I'm just like, "Oh gosh, these guys aren't retiring on an island somewhere? That's what's supposed to happen."
Well, some of that's going to be false news, right? Like some of those gardeners are making up stories to get rid
The
of
ones
those
that
customers.
yeah, the ones that have moved interstate. That one, I'm like, yeah, that's got to be BS because the amount of them that have gone interstate, I'm like, that's not true. Yeah.
Well,
So,
maybe there's just a lot of people moving from Melbourne to Queensland.
I mean, look, yeah, if they want to get away from the high prices of houses, yeah, probably.
Yeah. But have a think about it, right? If you are going into that higher end subdivision there in a Hilux ute that's a 1986 Hilux ute with all the panels are banged up, there's no signage on it, and you got a push mower and a whippersnipper that the whippersnipper's sticking up so it catches on everything as it goes past. Thinking of somebody in LMCA recently.
Yeah,
if you look like
the
that,
bent where they hit the tree. I wonder
yeah,
what happened. He posted an update on that. I want to know if the council are responsible for that. Was it that one where the tree was hanging over and it hit all his?
I think so, but I think he also then went and did the same thing in a shopping centre car park.
Oh,
But I think a lot of it's for attention. He's really enjoying the attention by posting stupid stuff, right?
oh gosh.
If
Yeah.
you turn up in a high end suburb and you look like that,
Yeah.
it's really competitive and it's really hard to get work in there. But
Yeah.
do you know Mowing and Growing? You would have seen their posts on Facebook and Instagram.
Probably.
They're on the Central Coast here, and Martin, I interviewed him a while ago. Right, every one of his vehicles are black with bright green signage, Mowing and Growing, and
Yeah.
it stands out. He's got probably 6 to 10 employees, about 4 or 5 vehicles running around.
Yeah.
And he services high-end acreage work. And he does other work as well, but his name is out there because he services high-end acreage.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do
Well,
you
it's like
turn up
that.
to
Sorry,
that
go on.
suburb with a vehicle that looks professional and work that is professional, and what's the competition doing?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's definitely a huge part. The presentation is. But then, have you heard of the alternative to that? And that's people. And he said it. I heard someone say it on one of your other interviews when he rocked up in a new Ute, and they went, "Oh, look, you got a new Ute. Geez, well,
Yeah.
you're doing all right, aren't you? So yeah, you get that as well. People think that
Yeah.
suddenly they're getting ripped off because you're able to pay for good.
Well,
You know.
pick a nice middle ground, right? Because yes, you'll always get people looking at that and going, "Oh, yeah, you've spent $80,000 on a Ute." You don't need an $80,000 Ute. You can get a $25,000 Ute,
Yeah,
right?
as long as it
So
looks nice.
if it's tidy and it's got a distinguished sign on it, then that's half the battle. The other half the battle is making sure that you are seen to be doing good quality work. So you want your word of mouth to take over from the signage, but the signage matches the word of mouth. So that way, when people see you've got one vehicle out there that looks like that, they start thinking that you are part of a franchise with dozens of vehicles out there.
Yeah,
They don't judge you for having a good looking ute if they think that you're part of a big business.
yeah,
They
yeah.
don't
The
sit there going, "Oh, you've spent lots
professionalism.
of money on your ute. That's ridiculous. I don't want you." Well, yeah, there are people who do that, right? So the customers that want their lawns mowed monthly, they're not going to come to you.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. There's a lot to be said for branding, and how you represent your business. Um, yeah, that's a huge part. I haven't put anything on my van yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I,
Well,
I have thought about it and I've inquired about getting it wrapped, but I just haven't. Like most of my advertising is like Google and Facebook ads, and they don't even see my van until it turns up at their door. So yeah, but that is definitely. There's also like I worry that I'm going to spend all this money on getting the van wrapped, and then I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I want to get a Ute trailer set up now. So it's like.
yeah,
Uh,
look at, I guess, what's worth your energy in terms of the worry? Is it worth your energy to worry about that? Or is it worth your while to go, that's actually building that business reputation that I need? Because 99% of the effort you put into building your business reputation is carrying word of mouth. So the image of your van, the quality of your work, the type of customers that you are seen at and that you're doing quality of work for, those things all carry a word of mouth that
yeah.
carries you through that area. And I found probably the biggest change for me was having word of mouth, not in those residential jobs that wanted $40 and $50 and don't come back fortnightly, come back at 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks. That wasn't great word of mouth. I was like, yeah, I can do quality work there, but a lot of effort and not a lot of reward. So the ones
Yeah.
that really paid off for me were the commercial sites and the acreages.
No, you're absolutely, yeah, you definitely, like, there's sometimes when they'll be like, oh, I'll have a client and they'll be like, oh, would you be able to quote my friend? And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I don't want to do your friend's lawn because I don't want to do your lawn. Like, yeah, I want to, it's like, so, yeah, that's something that, can be said for that. There's also like, I also get this feeling where like, and this is probably just more of a me thing, but like when someone refers me, I almost want to like give them a deal because I'm like I want. So yeah, I don't know. There's always a bit of like people pleaser sort of,
That that is a real challenge, isn't it? And I think being a people pleaser is not a bad thing, but they say that the CEO of a business is usually the most effective when they're a narcissist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I can totally get that. Yeah, and look, at some point there, I did have to develop that ability to be able to just be like, no, look, this is, because people don't. A lot of people, and we're all obviously generalizing here, but a lot of people don't really care whether or not you make enough money as a business. They would
No,
just don't want to pay anything, for
nobody cares if your business is there tomorrow,
yeah,
except for
yeah,
you.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I had to sort of just start, you know. And you also said ages ago, which was like, you need to put some value in what you do. You need to value yourself a bit higher. So yeah, that's basically what I started to do. And yeah, once you get the first couple and they agree to your quote, and it's more than what you usually quote, you're like, yeah, yeah, cool. You get a little bit more confident. You're like, right, cool, awesome. And then you can start, going on more, taking those risks, higher quotes.
Yeah, definitely. And that was very true. This story I've told too many times, but when I was doing $40 and $50 jobs and working on $50 an hour, I got to the point where I was too busy, so I quoted a job at $80 and they did not bat an eyelid. Same suburb, same socioeconomics. The demographics were exactly the same, and I'm pretty sure they were going through separation and divorce at the time. So every reason in the world why they would be looking for the cheapest quote possible, I was confident. I didn't want their job unless it was $80 or more.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they took it. They needed it, and they took it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then you're just like, oh, awesome! I can actually quote this. So I'm going to start doing it. Yeah, but it's it's good how that sort of starts to get the ball rolling.
Yeah. Well, when people say, and I'm not picking on you at all, when people say, "Oh, I'm in an area where I can't charge more than $40 an hour," I'm like, "Yeah, I was charging more than that when I started 14 years ago, and it wasn't enough." And when I charged $80 for a 1 hour job, they didn't bat an eyelid. This is 14 years ago. They took it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if I could do that 14 years ago and you're saying you can't do it now, it's mindset. It's what's in your mind that's blocking you. It's not the customer.
yeah, yeah. No, look, there is definitely a lot. Uh, you know that's true. And there are out there because everybody's different. But yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I'm not picking on you with that. I think that's what people need to hear. And, the more times I say that in a podcast, get 146 episodes out there, and I'm going to keep on saying it. You've got to learn to change the way you think about it. This is a business. It's not something where you're doing a charity. You can do a charitable job, but you can't run a charity and
yeah,
put food on the table.
yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I just really just taking this opportunity to ask you what the questions I had listening to other people and wanting them to answer. But people, obviously, a lot of people don't want to throw a lot of this stuff out there. They might like to just, keep private about this sort of stuff or any of the.
And I respect that. I
Yeah,
always ask, "Hey, Alex, how much money do you make?" But you don't have to tell me. I'll respect that.
yeah, yeah. So for me, all I can do is listen to what other people are saying and then determine from and go with that, and continually try and build, like you said. They are out there. Um, but yeah, that's just half the battle is getting those, believing in yourself and all this sort of stuff, and valuing yourself higher, and
Yeah.
yeah. I used to originally look at cowboys and be like, oh, these people are, ruining it and lowering the bar and stuff. But it
Yeah.
wasn't long before I started taking the mentality that we're not competing with them. That's
Yeah.
been said. Guys who are doing gyms, they're not looking at the cowboys. That's not, you know, their competition. So yeah, that sort of helps as well.
Definitely. And I think that's well worthwhile. If you look at the Cowboys, and I was a cowboy when I started, right? So I'm not putting anyone down by saying that, but look at them and what they're doing. Are they doing something sustainable? Are they doing something that's for pocket money or beer money or for, to give their family a better Christmas present? So they've got a real job somewhere else, and they're going, all right, I'm just going to do some lawns after work or on a weekend so that I can go, all right, there's, a couple $100 a week I can put towards buying my wife a engagement ring or buying the kids something that's actually really nice.
Yeah.
So those people are out there and they're doing it. And good on them because they're doing the jobs I don't want to do or I don't have time to do.
Exactly. Yeah, like when I go into like a massive jungle, I'm like, yeah, this is definitely for a cowboy. Cowboy can do this one, and then I head out.
Well, I've done those jungles and I've regretted doing some of them, but I think a really useful number to look at is if you're doing full-time work in this industry, regardless of the equipment you're using, but if it does come into it at the other end, if you can do $80,000 a year turnover, then you can probably survive and do okay. If you're under $80,000 a year turnover, and this is 2024 where cost of living is getting a little bit ridiculous, if you're under $80,000 a year turnover and you're working full time, and you can extrapolate that out for if you're doing 4 days a week or 3 days a week, then you're probably going to be struggling.
Yeah.
So people out there look at that and go, okay, that's achievable, or maybe it's not. Maybe they start reflecting on that and going, well, maybe I need to go and do something else, or maybe I need to change the way I look at it so that I can hit that mark. It is quite reasonable in Australia, even in areas like where you are or in regional areas, to be able to do $80,000 to $150,000 turnover as a solo business.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
all the other factors we've talked about, when you look at those numbers, the daily amounts, the job amounts, the hourly amounts, look at that annual turnover and go, okay, am I in the ballpark? Now, after you look at that, then you start going, all right, well, what's my expense ratio looks like? How much of the expenses that I incur in business do I benefit from in my lifestyle? All those factors will come into whether $80,000 a year is actually good for you or bad for you.
Yeah, if you have a family, if you have kids, yeah. At the moment, I don't have any kids, so I'm all right. But sometimes I think, if I got kids, I better up my prices.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
one
There's
of
also the
the
dual income part as well. So if you have a partner who's earning income, that also
that makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
One of the first commercial jobs that I got asked to quote on, I just flat out turned it down.
Yeah, right.
And this is worthwhile for people to think about, right? Because commercial jobs are not always the right thing to do. I was doing majority residential work at the time, and that meant that my route density was really good, 10, 15 minutes from home, and everything was awesome in terms of route density with residential work. But my turnover was sitting around that $70,000 to $80,000 a year. Now, I could have taken on this commercial contract. It would have probably brought me in an extra $15,000, $20,000 a year. But I turned it down because it messed with my route density.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
So on that basis, I was like, I'm better off staying where I am. Now I look at it and I go, okay, that's not the way I approach it, because I want those larger jobs rather than $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000 a year residential jobs. I want the jobs that are $40,000, $50,000, $200,000 a year. And that's how I rate my jobs, is how much do they make per year, not how much do they make per hour.
Yeah. I mean, I low-key want to get like one of the contracts like that you have, because you're always on holidays, man. I'm like, where's you off riding to now?
Well, keep in mind, I've got to have an employee there when I take a holiday.
Oh, that's true.
So
That's true.
it's all right, but if you don't have a reliable employee to cover you when you're gone, then it's a headache. And I've had to go through that coming through the back of COVID. Trying to find a reliable employee was almost impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you have that conversation. Even you had that conversation with the guy from Adelaide. I've forgotten his name.
Clint Adams.
Yeah, because you were talking about. But I mean, everybody talks. To be honest with you, I don't think I've heard one contractor say, I mean, they very rarely find a employee that they're happy with. It seems like 95% of them are just annoyed at their employees.
I've got an
Um,
employee at the moment that I'm really happy with, and not to say that they're perfect, because broken windows or things going wrong occasionally. It happens to the best of us, or our employees, and it's frustrating, right?
yeah,
But I sat down with her yesterday and I said, we got to have some tough conversations, because you're an employee and I got to be able to tell you when things need to change. Said, but make no mistake, I really value you and the job you do, and I get constant feedback about how hard you work.
yeah, nice.
So
And then you gave her the smelly battery harness. You're like, there you go.
no. I can't give it to her. I've got to let her take it, remember? Because it's,
Yeah.
got to be politically correct.
Oh dear.
Now,
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, that's commercial work is not always the best choice. And yeah, I'm doing commercial work, so people listening to me will go, well, if Gary's doing it, and if he's dropped residential to do commercial, maybe it's better. Maybe everybody listening will be wanting commercial contracts that are massive. It's not always easy. It's not always a good choice. Residential jobs where you've got a really tight route density can be
Yes.
the better choice. So it's not one size fits all. You've got to work out what works well for you. And when I get people asking me about how to get commercial work, sometimes I want to say, don't even bother. Focus on what you're
Everybody
doing and
wants the
doing it well.
commercial stuff. It's very competitive, isn't it? Would you say it's more competitive than residential?
Yes and no. The comparison's the killer of joy, is what they say.
Oh, okay.
And what I was just saying is, if you already are good at what you do, focus on improving what you do rather than chasing something that you don't
Is
do.
that like the grass is always greener on the other side, but like just a different version of that? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's a little bit deeper than that, right? So if the grass is always greener on the other side, you might go, oh, I've got a KTM. Maybe I really need a BMW, right? But you still got a motorbike.
Yeah.
So you've got
Don't
joy.
try and rope in some motorbike stuff here, all right? I don't know anything about motorbikes. My brother has a Ninja 650. That's it. That's all I know. All right.
Cool. All
I
good.
don't know.
Full respect for the Ninja 650. They're beautiful.
Okay.
But the point is, like, grass is always greener is sort of a superficial level, whereas comparison is the killer of joy, or the thief of joy. Takes it a little bit deeper. It's like, if you choose to compare to other people, you will often find yourself really depressed.
Yeah.
If you choose to elevate yourself, then a little bit of comparison with other people to go, well, what am I elevating to, can be really helpful. But if you sit there going, I need to change, I need to do a 180 because XYZ, everyone around me is doing commercial work, it's a really big challenge to actually do a complete 180.
Yeah.
Whereas
I think,
if you take the approach that I've heard a lot of smarter people than me say, if you change one thing, 1%, and then you come back again and you change 1% again, and you just keep on doing those small refinements. So you've got residential work, refine that residential work. I want more hedge jobs, because I know when I do a hedge job, I can charge $120 an hour instead of $80 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Or I want more weekly jobs, or I want more monthly jobs, because you said you do a lot of monthly jobs. I want more monthly jobs instead of more higher frequency, because I know when I do the monthly jobs, I can charge a slightly higher rate, and I'm still doing the same amount of work per day, per week, per month, per year, but I've got more diversity if I've got more customers. And that way, if one customer drops me, or I've got a couple of jobs that are casual jobs rather than regulars and they're one-offs, I can charge a higher premium. So whatever you do, hone it, improve it just a little bit, and keep on doing that. And that way, rather than looking at what I do or what mowing and growing does and going, oh, I want to be like them, well, I would say the hack there is to go, the thing you can do like mowing and growing is to look professional like mowing and growing. Don't chase the acreage jobs, because you got to completely change your business 180 degrees. But you can make sure your ute always looks nice and tidy, and make sure or in your case, the van looks nice and tidy, and make sure it's perhaps got some signage on it that stands out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I should look into that.
Those
Definitely.
little 1%ers keep you growing and improving, and that is so much more valuable than doing a 180.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because what I like the main draw I imagine for commercial is security. Like we would look at it and be like, we've got a secured income. We don't have to worry about doing this. But then there's a whole set of different issues and problems and challenges that you don't really take into consideration.
Well, what's the perfect number of customers? There's no
Oh,
right answer there, sorry. But for
I was
you
just
right
going to
now,
say one extremely wealthy
well,
client that would just
if
pay
you've
you.
got one customer, and that's kind of where I am at the moment, and they say, see you later, you got
Yeah,
nothing.
there you go. Yeah, exactly. So I just did it as I just did the perfect. I just did exactly what I do. You look at the other side and you don't consider the
So,
issues. But when you
based
sit
on
down,
where you're at the moment, what's the perfect number of customers? If you just go duplicate what you've got till you've got a schedule that you're happy with, where you've got the right number of customers to be busy but not stressed about keeping up, then that's the right number of customers for you. Now, then you want to go back and start analyzing that about how do you make sure those customers are profitable?
yeah,
How do you make sure that you're finding more of those customers? Because you always want to be looking for the next job.
yes, that's right. Yeah, no, so that's it. Yeah, and that's pretty much like where I feel like I'm at now. Like I'm very close to that point where I'm like, now I've got this ideal amount every day. I have a solid amount of hours that I'm working and I'm happy with. It's just about building that up and getting rid of those jobs that are annoying. Like
Yeah.
whether it's the access point is really annoying or they've got a backyard and in the backyard they've got like this massive steps that go up and I have to lug the 216 up these steps and I'm just
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like I've spent an hour and a half doing too much talking and we haven't really learnt a lot about Alex.
No, yeah, we haven't. Sorry, I just go straight in. I got these questions I wanted to ask you. So
No, that's cool.
yeah,
And I'm happy. I think that sort of interview where you've asked me questions, it's interesting for the listener. But I think let's spend a little bit of time helping the listener understand you a bit better, and then it's going to be time for dinner. It's time to say goodbye.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So we've already gathered a little bit of information about you, but if we drill down on your equipment, you said you're running out of the back of a minivan,
Volkswagen, Volkswagen
Volkswagen,
Caddy.
Volkswagen Caddy. Yep.
Yep, old
And
RACV van.
oh
So
yeah, nice.
yeah,
But you've got the 216 in the back of it. Have you got it organized or is it messy?
no, it's all organized. I built all of the internals,
Yeah.
so it holds all my equipment.
So if your
And
customer comes out when you're there and they see inside your van, they're like, oh, this guy's actually got a pretty well organized van, which is reflective of the rest of his life and his business.
yes, they're actually, generally speaking, I mean, I don't want to brag or anything, but a lot of people are quite impressed with the setup. They're like, wow, you got all that in there and it sits nicely and neat. And I
Yep.
can take grass bags in it as well. It's got the ramp and it sits up and it rolls up the ramp and it locks in,
Yep.
to a wood. So yeah.
Awesome.
And then I got the latest addition I got was one of those easy flow um, hoses that you can like automatically sucks the fuel out, fuel
Oh,
transfer
it's got
hose.
electric pump in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Awesome.
I keep that in there and it's got like the longer hose. So I just fill the because I did do the funnel thing, but I was always spilling petrol everywhere. And when you fill up the two, it's just I was like, oh, this is annoying. So
So you
not
got
one of them.
petrol in the back of your Volkswagen Caddy.
Yep.
Petrol smell comes through to the cabin.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad. And look, I imagine that, if someone gets in there, they probably would be like, oh, bit of a petrol
Yeah.
smell. But
I
I
was
don't
going to
know.
say, when you say it's not too bad, I can see you look like you've been smoking mushrooms. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, look, I do get a little bit lightheaded sometimes when I'm driving. No, it's not too bad. I don't really, and it is quite sealed. Like everything's sealed up. Yeah, so I don't quite.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I really don't
Okay.
smell it. It's just surprising because I thought I would, but yeah, I really don't.
So do you have any battery tools in there or
Yes.
is it all petrol?
So I recently, so the first whippersnipper I had was a Honda something UMK 425U, I think it's called. Like,
Oh, I feel sorry for you.
yeah, it
And you
was.
did mention this. You said you've bought some ego gear, right?
Yes, so that was my first whippersnipper, and I didn't, really like it,
Yeah.
and it's now sitting in the garage on top of a shelf, and I don't know what to do with it.
You should attach it to the back of your van, pointing straight up, and then drive under a low-hanging tree. And make sure you video it when you do it so you can share it with everyone.
Yeah, so I'll tell you something. When I started before I had the caddy van. I worked out of a Mazda 2,
Oh, yeah.
and
Wow.
the whippersnipper was too long to fit inside the car. So I bought roof racks for $30 off of like eBay, and then I stuck the whippersnipper on top. So I was driving around in a Mazda 2 with this giant whippersnipper attached to the roof. So
I can
proper
imagine
cowboy
that the
stuff.
Honda whippersnipper would have been flexing every time you went over a speed hump or a
Yes,
pothole.
it did. It used to bounce up and down, and I was like, yeah, it was clearing the window. I was like, yeah, it's not going to hit the window. So,
Yep.
and then I bought the very first mower I had was my housemate's lawnmower, which was like it was like a 250 plastic piece of crap, and
Yep.
I was like, oh, this isn't going to cut it. I think I used it once before I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So I bought my first expensive mistake. I bought a HRU 196,
Yeah.
which was a great mower, but getting it out of a Mazda 2 out of the boot was so hard on my back.
They are
And
heavy.
they're so heavy. And when you're putting down a mower, as most people realize, you can't bend your knees. So
Yeah.
you sort of have to like do this weird squat, and it's just so hard on the back. And I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. So I sold that for a little bit less than I bought it, like a month later,
Oh,
and
wow.
bought the 19-inch higher end domestic version, which is like the HR 19, HR something 19.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Is it
I can't remember.
HRX or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. It's not a yeah, and that was great, and it worked well. It didn't have self-propelled, and if I think it had a blade brake, which was nice.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, I think, and that worked out really well for a while, and then I started getting larger backyards, and
Yep.
I was like, oh, this isn't going to cut it anymore. So I got a secondhand 216.
Yeah.
And that's I have it. I have two now,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
want to sell one of them because I had it as a backup. But what I'm finding is they don't really, knock on wood, break down that often that it even really warrants having a
backup.
backup. So, yeah, or if I'm going to get a backup, I was thinking of getting an ego because that would help with like going up the stairs. I can just carry up the ego. That'll be way better. So yeah, I'm going to offload that. And then I got rid of the Honda, and then I needed a hedger, so I thought I'll get a multi-tool instead because I can use the hedger attachment, and then I can have the backup whippersnipper attachment if I need it. So I went and I got, you know, again. So this is pretty much how it went, right? One episode they're talking about it on Skull Sessions, and BJ's
Yeah.
talking about, he loves it, he loves using it, and he's like, yeah, it's great. And I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. And so then I got it, and I was like, oh, this feels really heavy. And then I'm pretty sure it was like the next episode or an episode later, Ben made a comment about how the head of the bushranger is quite heavy. And he's like, oh, it's pretty. And I was just like, because
Yes.
like, look at me and then BJ, BJ, he's way stronger than me. So he feels like nothing to him.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I really avoided doing hedges for a long time just because it was so heavy. And I was like, this is really working on the arms.
Yep.
So the bushranger, then the Honda eventually went into the garage because it carked it. And
Yep.
the bushranger with the whippersnipper attachment became the main tool.
Yep.
And now and that's pretty much what I've been using. And
Yeah.
until like literally a week ago, I got the 4500, and I've really been enjoying that. And I literally had to whip it in the dark. It was last night. I went a bit longer. The job took me a bit longer than I thought it would, but I felt so much better whippersnipping with a quieter whippersnipper than if I had the 2-stroke bush ranger going there, you know? So,
fair enough. A lot of people have been asking about which brand of battery tool to buy, and I don't like to recommend one brand of battery for everyone or every situation. Dealer support and access to parts and service all play a big role in that decision. Some brands have better tools for specific needs or each product category. I've been using a variety of brands, and I endeavour to provide unbiased interviews on Aussie Lawn Stars with as many of those product brands as possible. I reached out to Ego Power Plus through the podcast because of how Barry supports the industry and Ego owners. Barry has impressed me with his loyalty to customers in providing support and listening to the needs of the industry, which has resulted in a full lineup of new commercial tools landing in Australia over the last 12 months that has positioned Ego as a leader in the commercial tool space for outdoor power equipment. Visit egopowerplus.com.au to see if they have the tools you need today.
Yeah, that's my main. I still have the bush ranger stuff in there. I keep it in there as a backup just in case I run out of batteries, because I'm not quite 100% on my battery.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it when you're getting started. Till you're comfortable that you're going to make it through most days without the petrol. It's worth having the backup.
Yeah. So, but so far everything's been really good. I did try to message the Ego guy on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I was just like, "Hey Barry, can you give me a good deal on something?" And then someone responded with like, no. More or less, no. And also Barry isn't the only one that talks on this. So yeah, I was like, all right, fine. Yeah, so that, and I've got the I got the Ego multi-tool as well, but I believe it's not there. It's just a domestic. They had a deal on it, and I was like, eventually I want to go all battery, so I want to have the ability to be able to hedge and put a whippersnipper attachment in case for whatever reason.
Yeah, fair.
And then I have a Mazport utility mower. I think it's like I can't remember what it is, but that's just so good for overgrowns or really high lawns.
It's good to have that.
Yeah, that's a good, and I can fit them in. So I can take that in the van. It fits in perfectly. I've like put these wood blocks in so it sits in there as well. Because the caddy vans aren't as big as like it's definitely not as big as the van that you're running. Yeah. I can't fit no zero turn in the back of my van, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's my current setup.
What's your average customer look like? Is it they're residential? Would it be half hour or less?
No, majority of them are around an hour.
I
would say, but I'd say it's actually a fairly good mix. It's quite a diverse range of clientele.
Yeah.
Like if I'm doing and what I'm doing, like more aged care work. If it's through the aged care, I might do more like personal, like one-on-one gardening.
Yeah, okay.
Like repotting plants and stuff like that, and just spend a lot of that generally is just talking with the client, you know.
Yeah.
So, because they really, especially if like they have like if I have like a Greek or Italian and they've got these vegetable gardens, they're so passionate about their vegetable gardens. They just want to tell you about I learned so much about vegetables. I know nothing before.
Yeah.
And then NDIS clients. A lot of the time I don't even see them. I'm just in and out. And
so if your average client is about 1 hour,
I'd say
and you've got some that are longer, does that mean you've got about 45 to 70 customers?
Yeah, I'd say around 70.
Around 70?
Up at that, yeah. Up at
Yeah,
that.
okay.
But then there's also like your nature strip jobs. Like your quick little $50 nature strips, which I can do in like almost less than half an hour. So if I and I use Sortscape, which you haven't really mentioned Sortscape. I know that you
I haven't.
you're with the other mob, aren't you?
Well,
What are they?
I'm not with anyone, but yeah, ServiceMate is the one that I interviewed, and yeah, we can I've talked with ServiceMate about doing something with them. That's an option there for me. But
Okay.
yeah, I like ServiceMate, but certainly
Yes.
not opposed to looking at what other ones do. And Sortscape, I think, is a really good value option for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like the biggest draw, which is why I went with them, was originally is because of the iPhone thing. Now I've got an iPhone now, and you
Yeah,
told me about the. I heard on the other podcast you mentioned about how they do a deal now or something like that, or they used to do a deal.
yeah,
And I was just like, could have got myself a damn iPhone, but
yep.
I've I am going to stay with them with Sortscape. I've been really happy with them, and
Oh, that's good.
if you message them, you can almost. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but for me anyway, I message that guy, any of them, at any time, and they almost instantly respond. Like a freaking
Wow,
Saturday night at 8 o'clock, I'm like, yeah, I'm having this issue with this problem, and he's on it, you know. So,
nice.
yeah, I'm really thrilled with that. And the other thing I wanted to also let you know about: have you ever heard of Henry?
Yep.
Yeah, so I used that, and that was a friend referred me to it. She had a completely different business, but that was
Yeah.
huge for me in relation to realizing what I can claim on tax
Yeah.
and what I
So
can get.
let's explain that for people, because a lot of people won't have heard of Henry, but you're talking about two different software suites here. So Sortscape is helping you to organize your schedule and your jobs.
Yes,
Henry is helping you to invoice your customers and organize your banking.
correct. It's primarily its main purpose is to take all the accounting issues that you would have to deal with as a tradesperson or a sole trader rather, and it does it in almost like real time. So when you invoice a customer, they pay to a specific account that Henry is, and then Henry will deduct all your taxes and Medicare levy and student loan or anything like that, and then they will send you the after tax income to your bank account, and that will the algorithm will adjust as you go out based off of your income.
Yeah. So it only works for sole traders, and it only works for those simple businesses where you're going, okay, any money that comes into this business is going into my personal bank account, but I need to make sure I allow for tax and Medicare levy and various different expenses that come along, so that you're not just transferring all of the money into your personal bank account and then having to draw money back out of your personal account to pay for your tax or your fuel bill or whatever it is.
Exactly. And what once you're established, I feel like if you want and you're comfortable, then you could move away from it. But for me, the benefit has been I can upload a receipt and I can see, oh wow, that's how much tax I've been able to get back, or this is how much,
Yeah.
this is how much is coming off. So I can see, oh, I've made this many savings.
Yep.
And you can message them and be like, what can I get for this? What can I get for that? And you can see your statistics. And so that for me, that's been very, very beneficial.
Yeah.
I feel like as time goes on and I'm more confident and aware of what's happening, then I could probably move towards someone more like Prosper Financial.
Yeah.
Shanna.
Yep. Yeah.
So
So if your business gets a little bit more complex, or you got employees, or you're going to a company instead of a sole trader, the various different things like that, that's when you start going, okay, Xero or QuickBooks is
yes,
or MYOB, I think might still exist as well. So
yep,
yeah, one of those complete accounting packages that works in with Prosper Financial or whatever accountant you use. And you need to check that, because some accountants will favor one of those packages. So I know with Prosper, they use Xero. So when I put all my details into Xero, whenever I spend money, it automatically updates in Xero, and then Prosper get to look at that and do my tax. I don't even have to talk to them because they've got everything they need.
yeah. And one other thing, like I don't work or I'm not getting any money from them, but Henry should send me some money for all the great promoting I'm doing for them. But
Yeah.
you mentioned how you have a new equipment account.
Yes. Yep.
So you can set up. After I heard that, I was like, awesome. And then I looked on, and they have you can set an allocation, and you can set it to a percentage. So every time I send an invoice, 10% gets deducted from that and sent to a specific account that I have as my new equipment fund.
Yeah.
And they put that in there so that you could set it up for superannuation, which you can do as well. But you
Yeah.
can also just send it to you can send it to invest in shares. You can do whatever. So yeah, I have it go towards my own little new equipment fund.
Yeah, so we'll give another shout out on that. So the reason I've got an equipment fund and I've got a tax fund and I've got expenses funds is because of the book called Profit First, Mike Michalowicz, if you look it up. And essentially he talks about making sure that when you get a dollar come into your business, you split that dollar according to the various different pockets it needs to go in. So it's a small pocket or small envelope accounting system that he's promoting, where you ensure that your envelopes include profit, hence the name Profit First. So that means every time I get paid, I split the money up by percentage into various different funds. And he comes up with, I think, about 8 or 9 different funds. You can tailor that according to your business. Some people have like 30 different funds that they have because of the complexity of their business. Some people might just have a straight profit and expense and personal account, and it just goes 3 ways.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that's huge. Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I mean, I just know that a lot of the people that I've spoken with, a lot of them are just like, yeah, money comes in, money goes out. You know, like
It's scary, isn't it? Because what's
Yeah.
left after all the money's gone out, and it's like, oh, there's money left over. I'll go buy myself a big screen TV, or there's no
Yeah.
money left over. I'm going to have to not have breakfast this week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was for me super overwhelming. All of the just trying to figure out the logbook. Like
Yep.
I'm just like, oh, what's going on here? What have I got? So I use a thing called I don't know if for you probably have a dedicated work vehicle, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So for me, obviously, because mine's mixed, personal and business, I was like, oh, I was looking at the logbook and I'm like, oh, I don't really want to be like writing stuff in a book every time I travel somewhere. That sounds. And so I Googled it, and there's something I've got called GoFar, and you
Okay.
plug it into your there's a port, like a computer. Like if you take your car to you would probably know. There's like it's called like a UDB port or something, UDB2 port. It's like where they
Yeah, I'm
would
trying to
plug in
think
a
what the right
computer.
name is for it, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
it's where like they would plug in a
OBD.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. So
OBD2.
you put it into that, and then you have the app, and it keeps a logbook for you, and then you can
Nice.
print out a logbook at the end, and like that's huge for
Yeah.
claiming. Like
So
that's
what was it
massive.
called?
It was called GoFar, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been using that, and it's been really, really helpful. And at the end of the financial year, you can literally type in, literally set it to send you an email with the 12 weeks, because you need a 12-week. So send in your logbook, whatever, and then you have that there,
Yeah.
and you can see it'll give you. You have to go into the app at the end of the night and select your business trips. But then after that, it'll give you an exact percentage
Yeah.
of your logbook. And so then you can claim all your business expenses, whether it's petrol, whether it's, maintenance, all that stuff, which is huge. Like that's a lot of money, So
Yeah.
that's why that's sort of going and learning all of that was
I need one of
massive.
those on my motorbike.
Yeah.
That one? That's a
Well,
work trip. That one? Yep, that's a
does
work trip too.
does that do bikes have ODB ports?
Mine does.
Yeah, nice.
Well,
So
one
the
of
other
mine
thing
does.
the other thing about it that's pretty cool is that because it's in the ODB, it tells you if there are any issues with your car.
Yeah, okay. So it does actually do the readout for all of the sensors.
Yeah. So that's yeah. Yeah, so
Nice.
that's generally we went on a tangent, which I do all the time, but
That's good.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, Honda mower is what I've got. That was your original question.
Yeah. So we were talking about equipment, and then we talked about the customers that you've got, and how many customers you've got, the type of customers you've got. It's giving us a good overview of what your business looks like.
Yeah.
And that's where we branched off onto using the different accounting packages that you're using.
Yeah, that's my yeah.
Okay. Look, I think that gives people a really good grasp on what you're doing. And I think based on where we're up to at the moment, we're almost at 2 hours on this interview.
Yeah, holy moly. That's like a record. Well, actually, I think he did more with the steel guy.
The
But
steel guy was
he-
2.5 hours. I've done one that went over, or a couple of them that went over 3 hours, actually.
And the steel guy, like, he had all of that cool stuff in the background. I was like, ah, shit. Now I have to look at my background. He had all like axes and
Yeah.
oh well.
Yeah, made for interesting dungeon talk. It's like, look at your cool toys in your dungeon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That was good. It was great interview. I'm so happy to have done that interview with Still. It took me 2.5 years to get there, but it was awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, they're actually engaging in with people.
Well, now I've got his direct number. I'm just going to keep him on speed dial and be like, hey, Silvio, it's time for another interview.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, you know how he said that the steel guys, they have the market share? Do you know if there's any infographic out there that has percentage of market share that each business has in the lawn mowing industry? Like, how much does Ego have? How much does Steel have? How much does Husky have? I would be so interested to see what, because everyone knows Steel are like, everyone knows that Steel are the main ones, right? And then probably Husky. But then what happens after that?
It'd be interesting to know, but I don't have anything on that. Sorry, no.
Yeah.
I talked to the market leaders, right? So I've talked with Still, I've talked with Husky, I've talked with Bushranger. It is interesting to hear their personal opinions off air. But,
yeah, right.
But yeah, it's not something that's published anywhere that I'm aware of in terms of what percentage of the market each company has.
Yeah, that's right. And then
I
it
think
would be
there's
the
some
Australian market, which is
generalizations.
so specific. Yeah. I just know that like Australia, as in regards to globally, we are a tiny percent of the lawn care industry, I think.
Well, yeah, I keep referring to population numbers when we start talking about this. So the US has 300 million people. We've got close to 30 million people. So we're roughly 10%, a smidge under 10% of the US population.
Yeah. There are more people in California than in Australia. So
yeah. But of course, when you say 300 million people in the US, the globe is at like 7 billion or something like that, right? So
yeah.
I guess the global markets for lawn care are going to be US, Europe, Australia, and then you start breaking down a few of those places into smaller demographics.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. And when you think about it, lawn care really is Europe or maybe Western Europe, America, and Australia. Because I don't know how big the lawn care industry is in Asia.
I don't know either. So it will exist, but no idea.
Yeah. And I don't imagine there's a huge amount of lawn care in the Middle East. It's mostly desert.
Well, it's interesting you say that because if I look at my statistics on my podcast platform, I'm going to see if I can actually bring this up while we're talking. Might take a minute.
You have a large percentage in Saudi Arabia?
No, but that's what I'm going to do because I can literally look at what countries listen to my podcast. And I'm pretty sure if you're a dedicated listener, you would have heard me mention Russia once or twice.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Russia.
So I've got to work out statistics.
Yeah, because when you think of Russia, you don't really think of the lawn care industry or green grass, and mostly think of, I mean, I don't know about you, but I just think of snow and fairy hats.
I've got to make sure I'm looking at all time when I'm looking at these numbers because otherwise it just gives me the most recent data and I want it to give me from the start of when I started podcasting. Date range.
Where's which is your best platform? Because I listen to you on Spotify.
Spotify is probably the easiest to track things.
Yeah, but they don't let you do any rating or any commenting. And if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but if I remember correctly, when you did a competition, part of the competition was that you had to leave a review or something, and I didn't have Apple Podcasts or whatever, so I didn't get to be part of that.
I'm sorry.
I was just like,
Well,
oh well.
That has been a metric that's important, right? So the metric on there allowed me to analyze it fairly well and go, okay, I can see when somebody leaves me a review, and it makes me look good when I've got more reviews.
Mm. Yeah,
I think
but
I've
you can
changed my
only
date
do.
range. It's not covering all of my episodes, but it's covering a large percentage of them, like over 95%. So now I can look at the countries where people are listening to my podcast. So
So give us
Australia
the
is the
top
top of
five.
the list.
Top five.
Australia, United States, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and Canada.
Yeah.
But, so Mexico's in there. Singapore's in there. So we're talking Asia. India is in there. And they're
India.
statistically significant.
There you go.
Indonesia, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Germany. So Germany is below Vietnam and Bangladesh.
Wow. And yeah.
So Iran, there is some lawn mowing happening in Iran, people.
There you go. There you go.
Japan, so we're hitting those ones that you were asking about, and Hong Kong, Turkey, Fiji, but that could be downloads I did when I was in Fiji on holidays.
Yeah.
And the Russian Federation.
There you go.
But that's not all. There's more, folks. So Philippines, Taiwan, Argentina, Libya, United Arab Emirates. There's people in United Arab Emirates, unless they're people that have listened to my podcast and they've just traveled there and downloaded one while they were there. Czech Republic, Kenya, Mongolia, Estonia. And these are really statistically insignificant at the moment.
Oh, okay. I was going to say there's only like 3 million people in Mongolia, and you've managed to get some.
We're down to one download out of 100,000 downloads, right? Egypt, Uzbekistan, how we say it, Sri Lanka, Ghana, Lao, People's Democratic Republic of Lao, Portugal, Saudi Arabia.
See, because it would be. You need to do a world tour, gardening around the world and lawn mowing around the world, and then go to Laos and see
Bosnia.
how many.
We've got one in Bosnia.
See, I can see that. I can see like Europe, Western Europe, and like, I think Bosnia would be like southwestern Europe. I don't know my geography that well, but but yeah, places like the Middle East and sort of, when I think of like Southeast Asia, like that, I just think of like jungle. I don't think of like lawns, but yeah. There you go.
Yep. So all around the world, most places have listened at least one episode.
Yeah. International audience.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's time to think about dinner, Alex. So I'm going to say goodbye. I think we've covered everything we want to cover, unless there was anything I've missed that you want to cover before we wrap it up.
No. I hope that everybody enjoys this episode, I guess.
I've enjoyed doing it, so it's been good.
Enjoyed
and we made it just over 2 hours, so that'll give people a solid 2 hours of listening on their Monday morning.
Yeah, nice. Well, I hope. Yeah, like I said, I hope everyone. I just wanted to ask. For me, I was just like, definitely wanted to ask the questions that I've wanted to ask for a while. So, and
good. Cool. Well, thank you for coming into the dungeon and giving us all food for thought.
No worries. Thank you for the interview. Thank you for the invitation.
No problem. It was good. Cool.
No.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.